Hello and welcome back to the channel, and once again we're here with another episode of my walkthrough and setup guides. And as you can see on the screen there, just looking at the Cadwell rundown community event, just been picked by Rich there at the very top, and a massive battle all throughout this community event with DTM Crave, who was at the top spot for quite a long time. Literally just this last day everything all changed, and Rich came from 4th place I think to jump right up to the top of the leaderboard after I thought I'd put in an absolutely mega lap to get a 640, and I think anyone that's in the 19s has put together a truly tremendous lap. 4 drivers on Xbox reaching the 19s. And it seemed only one driver on the PC managed to break into the 19s, so I certainly think we've got a good quality of drivers on Xbox, that's for sure. So let's take a little look at the setup on the car, and then take a drive around. Certainly put me to the test setting the car up for this one, and quite a lot to look at I think. So here we are at the tyres and brakes section, and obviously I was running the soft tyre or the slip tyre, and the PSI really is just, as always, to get some. Obviously I've run lap after lap trying to find the sweet spot of the tyre, and in the 17s was perfect really for the one lap. I think you could run 2 laps on this tyre at these temperatures, but obviously just running a little bit softer at the rear like most cars, just to get more traction from the rear end. The brake pressure, obviously there's a few corners on this circuit that are very brake dependent, which you're actually using the brake to turn the car, so I didn't want to have too much lock-in, so just to a point where obviously lap after lap you're running around and just trying not to lock out through any of the hard braking sections. The brake balance definitely needed to get the corner in the background, the last section of the circuit, just to get the car turned through this corner was primarily why the brake balance is what it is. It's all just a case of getting the car to turn. Moving on to the brake ducts, obviously we're just trying to get some cooling done throughout the brakes themselves. So just really opening these out to a point where they were kept really cool, and especially for this last corner, as again you can see in the background, so that they're working perfectly for this corner. The downforce, I ran 4, 5 and 6 on the rear. Totally got rid of the front downforce because it just causes far too much drag down any of the straights. It's so noticeable if you run alongside it without downforce. You're instantly overtaking your ghost. But the rear downforce was a bit of a weird one on this one, because I ran some good laps on 5, I ran some good laps on 6, but 4 always seemed to work just perfectly really. If you drop down to 3, there's just nowhere near enough downforce, and you notice that instantly you take turn 1. The suspension, I didn't run full casters on this one. It just seemed to handle much better with less caster. I don't know whether the steering felt more precise with less caster, but definitely running. Obviously you can see this slightly non-symmetrical on the fronts, and again at the rear, which it was such a weird one. For the last time I actually set a car up on here, I did run less on the right hand side of the car, because as I explained last time, when you're going round a right-handed bend, and there's a lot of very important right-handed corners on this circuit, I just find it adds more grip running less camber on the right side of the car when you're going around a right-handed bend, because the car's leaning over onto the left, it's sort of leaning left. I put more camber on the left hand side and less on the right hand side, just to add more grip. The ride height, we could have dropped down a few more clicks, but obviously you start bottoming out in some areas if you go too low on this circuit. The spring rates, again, just a little bit softer at the front than it is at the rear, just one click down. But obviously we're running a softer rear, and the ride height at the rear is obviously just to get a little bit of a rake on the car so that the front sits lower than the rear, and obviously just to try and get that rear spoiler working a little bit better. But obviously we've lowered it a little bit more from the default setup, I think. And again, the spring rates at the rear, I think I've tried these at numerous levels really to try and get more grip, but 80 seemed obviously to be the sweet spot. Steering ratio, obviously there's a few tight corners on this circuit, but again I'm using the McLaren wheels, so I'm not wanting to lock out my wrists, letting go of the wheel in any way. Toe angle, obviously we're just trying to get more response out of the front. I wouldn't generally see front toe going any more than about 0.2 to 0.4, and then the anti-roll bar. Pretty stiff setup really for this one. You don't want too much body roll, and just trying to keep the car planted really. Toe again at the rear, just a little bit to try and straighten the car up on corner exit. And the dampers, for some reason I really did lower out the front bump stop, because I just felt like, I think I had it around 20, and I just felt like the car, especially through the section that you can see it in the distance there, the car just seemed to be juddering all the way through there when the bump stops were around 20. So I was just assuming that it's hitting the bump stops constantly. So by getting rid of the bump stops completely, you can use the whole of the suspension travel, and it just seemed to make the car better through sector 3, reducing the front bump stops completely. And the rear bump stops, I tried taking these away, but as you come through the section again, you can see in the background, just as you come through that tight right-hander to come up the hill, it just felt like with the bump stop removed, it just wasn't planted through there. So just increased the bump stops more and more each lap, and got to around 30, and it just seemed to breeze through there really nicely. I think I've altered these a little bit, probably softer at the front and harder on the rear. Yeah, harder at the front, softer at the rear, but took the bump transition all the way down, so that it takes longer to transition from slow bump to fast bump, just because we're trying to get more and more traction, and it's a fairly bumpy circuit in some sectors, especially sector 2, and obviously there's a lot of sector 3 coming through those left and rights, but it just seemed to handle much better with a slower transition. Obviously we're running no fuel, no radiator. I think we can get 2 laps with no radiator. The engine braking again is very important on this circuit, not to have too much, because you don't want the car to be locking out through, especially the final sector, final couple of turns, and there's a very fast middle sector that we'll look at, where I didn't want the car to turn too much. The drive ratio, we can't do anything with these gears again. You're just removing one gear, so if like you adjust that, it's exactly the same gear in its second gear, so you can't really adjust those. You can just adjust the final drive, and it was really a toss-up between 4.9 and 4.6, and I just seem to have a better run with 4.6, although the 4.9 was really nice. Third gear was much better. If I could have adjusted my third gear in the 4.6, I would have liked to have done. No traction control, no ABS. Moving to the differential, obviously we've got the geared LSD on, we've got the clutch LSD on, and we've got the viscous lock on. So there's a heck of a lot going on. Tried the bias ratio down at 2, tried it at 1, going all the way down, tried it at 4, and just didn't get any better performance at all other than leaving it on 3 to 1 ratio. The preload again, it's all just a case of how the car turns here. The preload and the coast ramp really affecting the car on the slowdown, trying to reduce the amount of car rotation, and the power ramp is rotating the car on acceleration, so not wanting too much acceleration. That's quite high really, 85, and the coast ramp just to stop the car turning too much. We want it to turn, but we don't want it to turn too much, so it's just, there's a few areas where this works perfectly and just keeps the balance of the car. The viscous lock, starting to use this more increasingly now, just finding it offers much better traction off some of the corners. I ran it a couple of times without and I wasn't happy with having it on, but eventually I think having done a couple of laps with it and just got used to how it changes the feel of the car, it just seemed to add more traction out of a few of the corners. So that's the setup. Let's drive the lap. So yeah, it just really puts you in a position where you get to practice this corner a few times, and you're really just squeezing the pedal far more than you would squeeze it in a lot of areas for braking, and you're just trying to whip it round into this corner and get the car to slide. If anyone else is using the McLaren wheel as well, I always, or for this one, I had the force feedback set at 50. So if you're following any of my control settings, bring it right the way down to 50 on this one. So as we set off, as you chuck it into here as well, there's like a little depression, and it's sort of, as soon as you throw it in and you land on the other side of this dip, just about here, you're back on full throttle as you come out of here, and the car just sits nicely. So all the way down, all the way up to 5th gear, and as we come into here, you're not going to lift at all off the pedal, and just as we hit here, you're going to throw it right in, and we're sort of aiming to go through the corner like that, just taking quite a bit of curb and not running too wide out here. Sort of want to stay in the middle of the circuit and just aiming across, going straight towards this cone on the left hand side. And you want to turn before that. You never want to run too far on the left hand side here, because it's a really nasty bump that just totally unsettles the car and you'll never make the corner. So as we come through here, we're going to take one drop down into 4th gear and just totally relinquish the accelerator pedal, and we're just going to lift off and sort of, it's almost like coasting for a millisecond or two, just while the car settles over this curb, and then 100% back on the power as quick as possible. Obviously you're fighting the wheel to try and get the car to straighten up, run right the way out to the left hand side, and then a quick drop down, probably around here into 3rd, maybe a tiny bit earlier, just to get the car to turn in and then get straight back on the power as soon as possible. The car's going to run really wide, struggling to make the corner and running all the way out. Taking the gear all the way up to the red line and then into 5th gear just as we come over the brow of the hill. Looking for the last board on the left hand side here, the one with the white chevron on it probably. And we're just going to brake just a tiny bit before, probably around this sort of area, nicely in a straight line, down from 3rd gear, down to 2nd gear, or down from 5th, 2 drops down to 3rd, and then just as we get around here, we're going to hold, we're just going to hold out for 2nd gear, and then take one final drop down, and then just to allow the the car to run, no acceleration, you just hear the note change to a point where you can just ease back onto the accelerator pedal. Now really tentative as we come through here, changing up through all the gears, but you definitely want to miss this curve on the right hand side or else you'll put you in a spin. And just sort of running really tentative on the steering. Any sort of traction loss at the rear and you're losing time, so you're just really wanting to feather the wheel as you come round here. All the way up to 4th gear, and then just as the car the corner sort of straightens out, just around here where the tyres are, just a quick drop down into 3rd gear and just sort of come off the accelerator pedal with a real snap, and it just sort of puts the car into a bit of a twist as you come all the way across this grass, taking all the curve you can, and then straight back on the accelerator full pelt and taking as much curve as this one as what you can as well on the left hand side, running the car all the way wide. And this is such an important corner. To come out of this corner perfectly, it's a real knack. So you might get up into 4th gear. I think I managed 4th on my fastest lap. So coming up to 4th, and just as the track sort of changes here, you're going to be heavy on the brake down to 3rd, down to 2nd in a straight line. And you just sort of really whip the car into this corner. You're wanting to really sort of induce a bit of a slide here. And as soon as the car starts sliding, sort of back on the accelerator as soon as you can, staying in 2nd gear. All the way up to 3rd, all the way up to 4th. And then again, as the track changes colour, you're going to drop down to 2nd. And I really think it's important while you're on the brake pedal that the left hand side, the left wheels sort of need to catch the curb on the left hand side here, and it just sort of drags the car round. And then you can be back on the accelerator again. And again here, I really think the car needs to touch this curb on the right hand side, and it just sort of pulls it round. So flying up the hill, you could have a little lift if you want, a little dab of the brake pedal, but I really think the car just continues much better just to stay on the throttle and just keep your foot down. Up to 3rd gear, and this is another really special area really. You don't want to be hitting these bollards on the right hand side. These really unsettle the car. So you need to really find a perfect line just to miss all these and just sort of come through at this sort of angle. And then a quick drop down to 2nd gear. I think I wipe all these out as I come through here. And then again, just trying to stay nice and clean through here. You probably full throttle pedals completely to the floor in 2nd gear, and then slowing the car down into 1st gear, and again just whipping the car through. It's going to really want to understeer, but trying to get the car to slide through here. And then again up to 2nd gear. Like I say, it just dips down and then back on the power again, all the way through, and just carry yourself to the line. It's such an intricate lap, it really is, but it was such a great battle in the community event. Really enjoyed this one, really pushed my tuning setup to the maximum, just trying little increments here and there in so many different areas. But one of the key points around the lap, you'll notice that the rear camber is slightly different on the right hand side of the car, if we just have another quick look at it, and the car that's the corner, sorry, that's way out after the long start finish straight, as you come down and you're in second gear, where I was saying you sort of really throwing the car in, that's why the camber's set differently at the rear, just to try and get more rear grip as you came round that corner. And just that tiny change just added so much more grip to the rear as I come out of that corner. It really did help. So everything on the car is set up really to run either 4 or 5 at the rear. It didn't perform at its best in 6, so if you're looking at the rear downforce, I'd say 4 or 5. And that's it for the tune. Hope you enjoyed that one, guys. Really great event. Thanks to Neil DTM Crave. Really pushed me on this one. And congratulations to Rich for setting the fastest lap in the world. I think 3 of us were there in the 6s, so fantastic. Thanks for joining, guys, and please hit that subscribe button, and I look forward to the next walkthrough. Ciao for now.